Ellis's eyes shot open as he half gasped, half snorted awake, face first on the ground. He coughed and blew out the dirt that he inhaled from the sudden air intake. He grunted as his head throbbed, which sent dull pain up and down his spine. Attempting to move only proved to him that his muscles were far too weak at the moment to possibly stand up. Ellis relaxed and focused on what he felt brushing against his skin. With some effort he turned his head to the side and cracked his eyes open. Grass. Soft, green, healthy grass. Where am I? Ellis thought. The cloudiness of his head, he tried to grasp a vague shadow of emotion, but to no avail. Like waking up from a dream, the memory of everything had happened before dissipated, like fog, possibly lost forever in the annals of Ellis's mind. His limbs still too exhausted to move, he lay there for what seemed like half an hour, trying to move every few seconds, each time being rewarded with another throb to his head and a little extra distance. Finally, he extended his arm forward as far as it would go and let it fall back down to the ground. It landed in a puddle of cold, clear rainwater, sending an icy shock through his systems. The sensation hit his cerebellum like a train. Wait. Water. Ellis's eyes shot wide open as everything that happened prior filled his head like a divine light. The bridge, the tank, explosion, him falling to meet the heaving frigid waters below. Strength was suddenly injected into his limbs as if he just took an adrenaline shot. He shot off the ground and attempted to stand straight up, but stumbled backward as his blood rushed out of his head and crashed against what felt like a bark of a tree. Ellis's eyes were screwed shut from the pain. Something was wrong with him. He knew it wouldn't without having to see it. He felt it by the way his body moved, the way his skin felt. Something was different about him, and his breath got heavier as he debated whether or not he actually wanted to know. His eyes cracked open, ever so slightly, as he raised his hands in front of his face to see. But they were not hands. They were still hands. He was still exactly the way he'd always been. I guess I just ain't feeling right. Could have sworn I'd been turned into something else, or some other crazy shit, Ellis mumbled to himself. Meanwhile, in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, on the Forge world of Kyrak, a tech priest inspected a Baneblade super heavy tank suddenly collapsed to the floor in hysterical laughter, much to the confusion and worry of his peers and superiors, and shouted something about how bipedalism rolls. With his fears diminished, Ellis scanned the scenery around him. Vibrant colors and blinding bright sunlight assaulted his corneas, causing him to cringe in such a sharp contrast from the depressing smoke-filled, zombie-infested cities. This wasn't a city. This was right smack dab in the middle of countryside. More specifically, right in the middle of an apple grove, completely untouched by any kind of strife or apocalypse. Apple trees as far as the eye could see. Their perfectly ripe red fruit hung heavily upon their branches, glistening with morning dew. That tears it. I'm in heaven, Ellis exclaimed with glee. Ellis had only ever been in a peach grove before, but he assumed that the rule of finding all kinds of cool shit was applied to apple groves. Combined with the prospect of eating juicy, fresh fruit as opposed to junk food, army rations, and beef jerky, made Ellis giddy with excitement. First things first, he thought. Time for some eatins'. Applejack coiled her body and struck out with her hind legs, her back hooves hitting the worn bark of the apple tree. A satisfying thump resounded and reverberated throughout her entire body as the tree leaves rustled, and apples fell neatly into her wooden buckets. She cracked a grin of satisfaction. It was apple bucking season at Sweet Apple Acres again. The prized fruit was at its prime, which meant it was time for the apple family to get working. Applejack, Big Macintosh, and even Apple Bloom were all out at the grove doing an apple's honest work. Applejack wiped the sweat from her brow with her front hooves. She began to hitch the buckster harness when Apple Bloom galloped up to her. "Big sis, can I help?" cried the bouncy filly. Applejack chuckled. "Sorry, Apple Bloom. I got this covered." Apple Bloom sank dejectedly to the ground. Applejack sighed. "Maybe you're older brother needs some help. Granny Smith could also use an extra hoof with baking them apple pies. She spoke earnestly, but the loud Bloom was not swayed. An idea came into her head. Maybe if you help them out, then later I can teach you a secret or two about apple bucking. That got her attention. She shot back up and smiled, sitting on her on her face. A smile sitting on her face. Can do, big sis. With that, Applejack's little sister ran off towards the farm. Applejack huffed her in relief. She didn't have anything against her sister, but the filly was just too much energy for her to deal with. Oh well, she thought. She'll get her cutie mark, and then she'll settle down and stop all the cutie mark crusader nonsense. Applejack, now with a load of fresh apples on her back, cantered off on the direction of her apple cart, ready to bring the full wagon back to the farm to be dropped off. Then her work begins anew. It was only mid-morning, so the farm pony had a whole day ahead of her, whistling the My Little Pony jingle as she got closer to the cart. Her eyes perked up, catching a distant sound carried by the breeze. To any pony else, this would have been nothing, but to Applejack the noise registered instantly in her brain. She had heard it many times before, the baying of her apples and the blight of her family. Rustling of leaves, a sharp snapping sound as her hard work of growing and tending of her crops was stolen from her. Varmints! She spat with venom. Ellis sank his pearly whites into the juicy, tender red skin of the fruit. Oh man, that's the best apple I ever did taste. A few more bites and he tossed the core off to the side and picked another. Well, best apple so far. Ellis leisurely lay on the tree branch, devouring delicious ruby gems without a care in the world. The fruits run off, dribbled mistily down the sides of his mouth and dribbled on his shirt. It was going to get sticky, but he didn't care in the slightest. The only thing that was on his mind was the apples in the hand, and the next one after. Beyond that, Ellis didn't really ponder upon how he got here, where he was, or what happened to his friends. All that mattered now was snack time. Another apple core thumped to the ground, followed by the snap of another one being picked. Ellis inhaled the scent of it before beginning to consume it like the last. It wasn't out of place for him to suddenly forget his worries and just enjoy life for the moment. It's what made Ellis Ellis. Right now, he couldn't imagine spoiling this moment, fretting about the small stuff. It was just him and the apples, at least until something else showed up. Applejack was trotting towards the source of the disturbance. Her load now discarded for the moment. Annoyance was set in her expression. She had tangled with all kinds of inconsiderate thieving critters before, and none of them ever elicited forgiveness from the earth pony. In the distance she could see an apple core being carelessly tossed to the ground. This made her blood go hot. She increased her pace, determined to get rid of this nuisance once and for all. Applejack arrived at the tree where the pest had littered the ground below. She couldn't clearly see what was up on the branch, but that didn't matter to her at the moment. She was fuming at the sheer audacity of whatever was eating her apples. Applejack inhaled a deep breath, and with a voice that would make Princess Luna herself recoil, bellowed at the top of her lungs, "Quit eating my crop, you apple-thieving varmint!" The shout literally knocked Ellis right out of the tree. He tried flailing his arms to regain balance, but to no avail. With a cry, he slipped out of his comfortable resting place and ended up face first on the ground. Thoughts raced through his head. He had no idea this was someone else's apple grove. Quickly he began his patent frantic apology, honed over many years of getting into all kinds of trouble in his hometown. Oh shit, I am so sorry. I really didn't mean to... Ellis' sentence trailed off as his head craned up to see the accuser. What he expected to find was an angry human being. What he got was an orange hat-wearing pony. Ellis' jaw dropped to the ground. Applejack's slack-jawed expression mirrored that of the thing that laid before her. She had never seen anything that looks remotely like the creature, except maybe the monkey Fluttershy showed her once. But this thing was no monkey. It had a face capable of a full range of expressions, fingers that were slender and more flexible, and a posture that was perfectly upright. It had clothes on. It talked. Applejack was the first to break the long pause of silence between them. "Just what in the hay are you?" she asked tentatively. Just after she spoke, though, the creature's face spread into the widest, goofiest grin she ever saw. Then it exclaimed something to the effect of following. "Oh my God, a tiny talking horse!" The next thing Applejack knew was that she was plucked off the ground and submitted to a near bone-crushing hug by the creature's lengthy, strong arms. Her face started to turn purple as her bouncy, gibbering captor continued to exclaim a long, unending stream of baby talk. She struggled with all her might, flailing her hooves furiously in front of her, with no effort. She was nearly out of breath, and this upright walking ape wasn't any closer to relenting. "Is this any way to treat a lady?" She spouted with the last ounce of her breath. The creature's face lost its expression and loosened its grip on Applejack considerably. Using this chance, she twisted her body back and forth, finally breaking free of its grip. Before the creature could sputter out another apology, Applejack blindly lashed out with her back legs. Her hooves contacted a soft spot in the creature's body, which happened to be right between its legs. The creature howled, its voice rising at least 3 or 4 octaves. It collapsed to the ground in front of the orange-colored earth pony, groaning and writhing in agony. Applejack stood over it, berating its behavior. "Now what in the hay was that for? I don't know what you are or where you're from, but you can't just go around squeezing and laugh at every pony you see." It continued to moan, its hands cradling its crotch as it rocked side to side. Its face was screwed up in severe pain. Applejack started to regret hurting it like she did, seeing how much pain it was in. She had no idea that her kick would put it in such a state as it did, knowing next to nothing about its biology. A few more minutes passed, and the creature was still hurting, albeit a little less intensely than before, but Applejack felt even worse. It tore her heart to see anything in pain. She timidly stepped closer to the creature. You all right there? I didn't mean to hurt you that bad." She spoke softly. It gave an exhausted chuckle. Pain laced through its voice. "That's all right. I figured I didn't need kids anyway." Applejack's face went shockingly pale as understanding hit her hard. "Oh my gosh. I am so sorry. I really didn't mean to. Oh no, oh no, oh no." She understood that virility meant to a stallion, and she assumed the same rules applied to other animals as well. The creature only gave a half smile. "Don't sweat. Small stuff." It was between groans. "It's all my fault. Anyway, that's no way for me to act." But Applejack already had tears welling up in her eyes, feeling really low that for what she had due to him, apparently. Are you gonna be okay there, Sugar Cube?" she sniffed. "They might swell up for a few days, but I've had worse. A lot worse," he replied, struggling up to his knees. "If you can forgive me for the way I acted, ma'am. I feel a lot better. I just never thought I'd see myself talking to a talking horse. What a story that'd make." Applejack smiled a bit, but her tears started to subside. "Pony, actually. I'm a pony, and yes, I forgive you. Well, all can get a bit excited, I guess." The question popped in her mind. "Now, can you tell me what you are, if it's not too much trouble?" "Oh, none at all, ma'am. I'm a human. Walk on 2 legs and work with my hands." He wheeled his digits. Applejack giggled a bit at that. She decided she liked this human fellow. He had a friendly accent that sounded almost like hers. Besides his earlier actions, he seemed non-threatening enough, not to mention polite and easygoing. She held her hoof, a gesture she used for meeting new ponies. Human seemed to recognize it and gripped her hoof with his hand and shook firmly. "My name's Applejack." She spoke proudly. How about yours? The human smiled warmly. Name's Ellis.